Welcome. I'm the Deadwood Jedi. This is part 3 of the Champion Balance, the new patch 2.20. We're doing Raid Shadow Legends. Just if you can take the time, if you guys are watching this, please go ahead and subscribe to my channel. It makes a big difference for me. It really helps support the website, myself, my content creation. Lets me do more of these type of videos for you guys. But I know you're here to listen about the champions, figure out what changed, what my thoughts are on them, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts on them too. So let's go ahead. I'll jump in and we can go ahead and cover all that. All right, guys. Let's go ahead and start about these legendaries. So we're going to start with Rotos, of course. There's a lot going on in this kit. It's not super well explained, so let me get into it. So a lot of this is my understanding so far. As I said, these releases are all pretty much brand new. So, you know, there's still some learning happening amongst us. So just so you guys know. Rotos, first we have... Alright guys, so let's go ahead and start with the legendaries. We're going to get into it with Rotos here first. Now, all of these, this is all brand new. We just got this information, so there's still some facts maybe coming through over time, understanding how these work. And again, we haven't actually played with these champions yet, so we don't know 100% what these mean as far as actual gameplay goes. We have pretty good ideas because, you know, we're smart cookies, but we don't know 100%. So try not to get too high, too low about any of this stuff. There's, you know, we'll kind of see how it progresses. But there's definitely some nerfs when it comes to the legendaries. So we're going to start with Rotos, go through that really quick with you guys. So Rotos, first off, he's got a 25% chance of granting an extra turn. And on his A1, his Vitality plundered, the damage is slightly decreased. His Fated Destruction, he's going to ignore 60% of the target's defense. Also going to ignore unkillable and block damage buffs. Enemies killed by this skill cannot be revived if this champion has max HP from the Vitality Plunder skill. Grants an extra turn if this skill kills an enemy. Also fixed an issue, bug fixed an issue causing incorrect damage calculation for the skill. So effectively it's resulted in a slight damage reduction. Okay, let me break this down. So first off, his A1. Right now it gives you a 30% chance of granting an extra turn. That's being reduced to 25%. No big deal. It already happens too often. It's not a big deal. This ability, his A2, Vitality Plunder, this is the one where he goes like this, and he steals all the HP from an enemy, and he takes it for himself. Well, he does that, and as he does that, he increases his max HP. He can't increase his max HP by more than 60,000. So 60,000 is his max HP that he can increase. The damage from that ability is being slightly decreased. Now, the reason why I go into all of that is simply to explain what's happening here in his A3 ability. His A3 ability, so the 75% chance to ignore target defense being reduced to 60%. That's fine. Ignore unkillable and block damage buffs. That's the same. Grants an extra turn if this attack kills an enemy. Still the same. Difference is, enemies killed by this skill cannot be revived. Now there's a condition on that. The condition is that you have a full 60,000 health from the Vitality Plunder skill. If you have all the HP from that, now those champions can't be revived. What that means is Rotos is no longer a block revive champion. That's basically what it's saying. That's the big nerf with Rotos here. There's more than a couple things happening, but that's significant, for sure. Now, does that mean that he's still not meta? I don't know. He's still probably one of the strongest single hit champions in the game. Maybe it means you prioritize the Reviver instead of some of the other champions instead. But, I mean, it definitely changes the meta. Definitely changes the meta on that. So we'll see how that affects things. So that's one. Next champion we want to get into, Scifi the Lost Bride. So first, the turn meter fill is now 10% instead of what it was, 15. The cooldown is increased to 6 on the Whirlwind Romance. That's the one that gives her the speed buff and the block debuffs. And the Eternal Bond passive, each ally will heal now of 10% of their max HP. So, what changed? Alright, not a whole lot. Scifi is still super strong. A1, no changes. A2, that 15% turn meter boost is now a 10% turn meter boost. It's basically the same skill. Not a huge difference there. That's going to be fine. The eternal bond, instead of each ally healed by 15%, it's going to be 10% at the start of their turn. That's also not a huge change. The one thing, the Whirlwind Romance, this is the biggest change. That cooldown went from 5 turns to 6 turns. So that means when booked, this is now on a 4-turn cooldown. That's actually a big change. That's a fairly decent nerf. I think it's in line with what she needed, honestly. I think that's appropriate. That skill's super strong. Having it on a 3-turn cooldown was a little bit much. So that's definitely going to make a big change in a lot of parts of the game, but I think that's a needed change. I don't have a problem with that. Okay, so another one of the nerfs is going to be Duchess Lilitu, and this is actually pretty big. Her Shroud of Souls skill is going to get reduced to a 6-turn cooldown, and that Shroud of Souls skill is the skill she uses, the one that gives the perfect veil, the increased attack, and the block debuffs ability. That is going from a 5-turn cooldown to a 6-turn cooldown. That means when booked, it's going to be, instead of 4 turns, 5 turns, which means I don't think you're going to be able to use Duchess in Clan Boss anymore. That's the big part of the nerf there. Should be just fine in Arena. I don't really see that being a huge issue there, but for Clan Boss, that's a huge blow. Okay, another one of these nerfs, which I think is actually pretty small, is Coronar. Basically, the turn meter reduction when he attacks is, instead of 10%, it's going to be reduced to 5%. I don't see that being an issue. It's a pretty, it's not a huge thing. It's on his A1. It's not his best skill. It's not his primary focus, right? He mostly does provoke. He mostly does decreased defense and attack. The turn meter thing is a nice thing when you pair it with Manaya, but the way it was with Manaya was way too strong. This is how they went about reducing that. Okay, guys, now we get to some of the fun buffs. So we got a lot of champions that are getting buffed, and I think these are really good changes. Blind Seer is going to be improved a lot. Block debuff happens first. You're going to see this repeatedly. We're going to place a block debuff and then the heal or the turn meter boost. This means that Tormund won't freeze them. Thank you. Block debuffs on allies for 2 turns, then place a shield buff on all allies equal to 30% of this champion's max HP for 2 turns. Good. This is going to be a nice, significant shield. Self-sacrifice revives all dead allies to 35%, places a block damage buff on all allies except for this champion for 1 turn. And done. And the cooldown is reduced to 6. It's great. It's great. She's no longer going to kill herself. Aura, increase ally defense in all battles by 34%. All battles, that's good. So, get an idea what we're talking about. Dark Shroud. So, before it was shield, then block debuffs, clearly an issue. Now it's reversed, that's great. And the shield is going to be 30% of her max HP. That's good. That's kind of like a Warlord shield that's really strong. Revive all allies. The part that we don't have anymore, this champion will receive damage equal to 25% of their max HP and will happen even if it kills this champion. No longer a part of it. Thank you. And then the aura, instead of just being for dungeons, for all battles, defense up by 35%. That's a big change too. So those are all really good moves. Oh, and that self-sacrifice ability gets reduced from a 6-turn. I should show that real quick. Instead of a 7 turn, it's a 6-turn cooldown. Book down to 5. That's in line with most of the revive champions out there. Alright, guys. Another one of these champions that's getting a nice buff is Warlord. Warlord's going to have Orcish Rituals reduced to a 5-turn cooldown, and his protection from the gods, he's going to place block debuffs first. The shield comes second. Love it. So let's go ahead and show it. So now we can use him against Tormund as he places a shield buff after the block debuffs, and the heal comes after 2. Block debuffs is going to come first. His shield is equal to 30% of his max HP. There's no change on that. It's a huge shield. You can see how good Blind Seer will be with that. And then very last, Orcish Rituals. This is going to, it's a 6-turn cooldown, book to 5. It's going to be reduced to a 5-turn cooldown, booking it to 4, which is pretty strong. So this is the one that resets other people's cooldowns. It's a real strong ability. I think this is going to work out real nice. Okay, next champion we want to talk about, Cretraxa. Curse of Writhing, 75% chance of placing a 25% weaken debuff and of removing 2 buffs from the target. This is a good one. This is really good. This is her A2 ability. It was a 50% chance to do both of those, book to 75. Now it's 75% chance, booked to 100%. So we're going to be landing that weakened debuff. We're going to be removing 2 buffs from the target. That's good. Prove that change. All right, next champion we want to look at is Gurgo, the Augur. Bone Chiller is going to remove 2 random buffs from all enemies, and that's pretty much it as changes. And it's reduced to a 5-turn cooldown. And then we also are improving his base speed to 98. That's a big change. Getting that base speed up is going to have a major impact on this champion. And so you can give you an idea of what we're talking about. The Bone Chiller ability removes 1 random buff from all enemies. That's going to be removes 2 random buffs from all enemies. And yeah, that's going to be the big change there. And then his base speed from 92 to 98, that's significant. Okay, guys, now we're on to one of my favorite champions that I don't have and would love to, and I definitely want him more now, Elder Scarg. He's getting quite the buff here. Excuse me, Elder Scarg on the A1. He's going to, in addition to all the stuff he does, he's also going to steal all the buffs from the target after the attack. So, not before, but he's going to take all of it after. That's pretty significant, I feel like. Elder's Clarion, he's also going to place a provoke buff, debuff on legendary champions for 1 turn. So in addition to all the stuff that he does anyway, he's also going to provoke legendary champions. I love that ability. I love that idea. And then Kingslayer, in addition to receiving less damage, he's also going to inflict damage equal to his own attack when attacked by legendary champions. He's such a cool little kid. He's basically designed to kill other legendaries. So like his A1 is the same. His A2 is hunt the marked, right? Places HP burn, true fear, attacks 3 times, can place extra hits, up to 3 of them, for each buff or debuff on the target. And then after that, he's also going to steal all the buffs from that target. That's great. That's great. Makes you want to attack the guy that's toughest. That's a cool thing. And then the Kingslayer ability, right? Oh, I'm sorry. The Elder's Clarion. Excuse me. So he's still going to do all this stuff, right? The increased defense, the true fear, the fear debuff, the block damage buff, the decreased speed, and then on top of that, he's also going to place a provoke on legendary champions for 1 turn. I love it. I love it. He's like the champion slayer. I hope he becomes meta in the arena, because that's where he should be meta. He should absolutely be meta. He should be killing everybody there. So I really like this. And then his passive, not only the damage, but he also, like, he basically has his own reflect damage, right? Where he's got his spikes. Right? You hit him, you're going to take damage. His spiked armor is essentially what's happening there. So, very cool. I like that a lot. Okay, another one of my favorite changes, not just because I have this champion, but because he needs the buff, is Kandra. He's going to get a big one here. So, from the shadows, there's a lot of stuff in this one. I'm going to try and unpack it for you guys. Passive effect. Damage increases by 40% while attacking under a Veil or Perfect Veil buff. Receives 40% less damage while under a Veil or Perfect Veil buff. Also boosts his champion's turn meter by 15% each time this champion receives damage under a Veil or Perfect Veil buff. Does not work if this champion is the only alive ally on the team. So, has to have an ally. Can't be the last one left. Every time he gets hit, he's getting a turn meter boost of 15%. So, kind of like a Molly ability, right? And then every time, yeah, and he receives less damage under Perfect Veil, and his damage is stronger when he's under Perfect Veil. There's an active effect to this ability too, to this passive. The active effect is it places a Perfect Veil buff on this champion for 1 turn each time an enemy turn meter is filled. This buff cannot be removed. What essentially this is doing is, the problem with Kandra is he has skills that synergize with having Veil on him, but he has to take an entire turn to put Veil on himself. This helps avoid that. He gets Perfect Veil for 1 turn when an enemy's turn meter is filled. So basically in the arena, everybody's turn meter gets filled right away. So as long as you don't go first, you're pretty much guaranteed to get a Perfect Veil buff placed on you. And that's off the turn meter boost, not off the attack, off the turn meter boost. So that can be pretty significant. And then Punished Hubris. Attacks when enemy places an extra hit. The target is under any buff. Not specific buffs, but any buff. And then On the Hunt places a Veil, Perfect Veil, increased attack buff, and a 30% increased speed buff, and a 30% increased crit damage buff on this champion for 2 turns. Now, kind of explain that. So the passive here, it used to be just decreased damage, or damage increases when under Perfect Veil or Veil buff, right? Now, that passive is way bigger. You're not only increasing the damage you do, but you're reducing the damage you take. You're also boosting your turn meter when you get hit and you're under Veil. And it, and the caveat is you can't be the only last guy alive for that to work. But still pretty remarkable. Now his A1 ability. Oh, and the active part is, of course, there's another active part where he gets Veil put on himself whenever enemy has a turn meter boost. Now his A1 attacks one enemy. Now it says place a hit if the target is under an increased attack buff. Now this is just going to be any buff. That's a much stronger ability. And then the A3, the On the Hunt ability. It was Perfect Veil and increased attack. Now it's Perfect Veil, increased attack, increased speed, and increased crit damage buff. It's very strong. It also makes it usable even if you already have Perfect Veil on from his passive. You can still want to take the time to use On the Hunt. It's still useful for you. So this is a big buff for him. I think this should be really good, and I think should make Candrafon viable in Arena. Still have to test it out to be sure, but I think this is overall a really good change. Okay, guys, next champion on the list is Tormund the Cold. There's not a huge change here, but I think we're finally maybe getting his passive to work correctly. So his passive, 20% chance of placing freeze debuff on the enemy each time they have a buff or a turn meter fill, and the 20% chance applies up to twice per enemy turn. Once for the buffs and once for turn meter fills, in cases where an enemy receives multiple of these effects at the same time. Doesn't work with artifact sets, doesn't work with turn meter filling effects for masteries, healing, or buffs or effects that take place at the start of a round. Okay. And everything else is the same. So, basically what's happening here, that 15% is being moved to a 20%. So in case, instead of having this apply 50,000 times to champions, this is only going to apply twice. Once when they once when they get a buff, and once when they get a turn meter boost. That's it. So healing won't affect it, artifacts won't affect it, masteries won't affect it. If you get a shield at the top of the round, that won't affect it. So Chris, you're good. All your allies are good from that. So that's what's happening there. The active ability is the same. There's no change there. So I think this is good. I'm hopeful it just works is the thing. Because either Tormund doesn't work as much as it should or works too often. Just make it work appropriately. I'll be happy with it. Next champion that's getting a buff is bestowfus. So looks like what's happening is we're getting a 50% chance to place block cooldowns. 35% of chance of placing a true fear debuff on for one turn on targets under block cooldown skills debuffs. And then Crumble attacks all enemies, has a 50% chance of placing a 60% decreased defense debuff for 2 turns. Also has a 50% chance of placing a block cooldowns debuff for 2 turns. So you can start to see the synergy there with that. As we move over bestowfus, you can see his pretty face. The horror ability, you'll have a chance to place fear if there's a block cooldown skill or debuff already on the target. And then when you go over to Crumble, this becomes an AoE skill instead of 4 times at random. So because you're getting block cooldown on everybody, or potentially so, this becomes much stronger ability with that true fear debuff on the A1. It could be quite problematic in Arena. I don't know if he's going to be meta at all, but I think he becomes a lot more useful. All right, the next champion we're looking at is going to be Nora. Nora gets one really significant buff, and the other one I'm not 100% sure how effective it's going to be. But I think they both could be pretty effective here. So on Maul, attacks one enemy, 40% chance of placing a block cooldown skill debuff for 2 turns. That can be pretty strong as A1. And then his passive ability decreases damage taken by all allies under one or more buffs by 15%. Decreases damage taken by all allies under no active buffs by 25%. And that's actually pretty significant. I think he's going to be really good in Arena. This goes from a decreased accuracy debuff to a block cooldowns debuff. That's way stronger. Way stronger ability. And then the passive decreases damage taken by allies by 15%. Though that only happens if you have a buff now. If you don't have any buffs, it's now 25%. So it's actually improved. I think the idea of this is that if you have a defensive tanky team, you don't go first, you're going to take a lot less damage, especially in the beginning when you don't have any buffs up, than you will later on in the fight. I think that's a pretty cool addition there, and the block cooldowns on the A1 is really nice. So that's a good move. All right, the next champion we're going to look at is Astrolith. It's one simple change that I'm kind of surprised by. Attacks one enemy, places 2 bomb debuffs, and they detonate after 1 turn. This debuff cannot be resisted. This actually has an interesting... it's not the change that probably anybody wanted, but it has some interesting ramifications. The biggest one is that because you don't need accuracy, because you can just place it, can't be resisted, you don't need accuracy. So that means you can really build this champion a lot tankier than you would otherwise, or a lot more attack-oriented than you would otherwise. And so that's kind of an added bonus, is you can put that accuracy gear into something else, and that's really good. Is it enough to make Astrolith viable or anywhere close to meta? I don't know. I don't know Astrolith's kit that well. I haven't played with her, but it's an improvement. Is it enough of an improvement? I'm guessing not, but you know, we'll have to wait and see. All right, the next champion I want to talk about is Hackhorn Smashlord. On his rallying below, removes all debuffs from all allies, then places the block debuffs on all allies for 2 turns, and then heals them. So yay, no more Tormund freeze. Simple. No more Tormund freeze. Blood Offering, removes all debuffs from all allies, then places a block debuffs. So this is wrong. Okay, you might have seen this change. There were some changes to this. They had the wrong skill up earlier. So this is the Blood Offering is sacrifices HP equal 25% of this champion's max HP, then attacks all enemies. Damage inflicted is equal to 50% of this champion's max HP. This attack is always a normal hit. The HP sacrifice will happen even if it kills this champion. I think they changed the percentage there. So let's go ahead and take a look at the champion, what we got here. So as you can see, the Rallying Bellow, we just reorganized all that so that he doesn't get frozen anymore. Basically the only change there, but it is a good one. And then we also have the Blood Offering. So instead of sacrificing half of his max HP, it's lowered to 25%, but the damage is still 50%. So he's going to do the same amount of damage, he's just going to take less of it. That's actually pretty significant. Not a big fan of kill me to do damage, but you know, I suppose it's good we have somebody in here that does that. That does that. Okay, guys. Next on our list, we're gonna go down to Abbess. Now, Abbess is she's getting a 75% chance placing that decreased defense, and then Divine Wrath is going to deal an extra 30% crit damage if the target's attack is highest, or ignore 30% of the target's defense is highest. This is kind of an interesting little thing. I'm not sure there's a huge change to her kit, but it is kind of an interesting synergy they're doing here. So basically, Mass Impalement, it's going to take that 50% and make it 75%, so it books up to 100%. That's a must. It should have been done before. I'm really glad they're doing that. And then Divine Wrath. So it's the same thing. It attacks all enemies, but the damage inflicted is proportional to either this champion's attack or the target's defense or attack stat, whichever is highest. So if their stuff is highest, we're actually going to get a bonus on it. So if their attack is higher than ours, then we're going to get an extra 30% crit damage. If their defense is highest, then we're going to get an extra 30% of ignoring their defense. So it's a very cool little strange synergy, really. That kind of rewards you for building your champion poorly, but I really like it. I like having different kind of ideas and synergies about it, so I'm interested to see what people can do with that. Okay, guys, next on the list is Gurgo. Now, the changes are interesting. Removes all debuffs except poison debuffs from an ally. Thank you. And Cloud Spores place 3 2.5 poison debuffs on all allies for 3 turns. Thank you again. So it's a pretty small change, but I think it's pretty significant. So 1, removes all debuffs. He puts poisons on you, so now we're not removing those. So at least he's doing what he's supposed to. And then the Cloud Spores, instead of 5% poisons, is only 2.5% poisons, which is significant because losing 15% of your health every turn is a lot. So that's a nice change. I like that. I think that's good. I'm still not sure how viable Gurgtuck is, but he should be better at what he does. Okay, next champion is one I know a lot of people were nervous about, Draco Morph. This nerf is not even much of a nerf. The only change is the surplus damage cannot be critical. It's fine. It's fine. Look, you have a Draco. Be happy. Thank your lucky stars. I don't want to hear your whining and complaining. I'm kidding. Obviously, this is a change. This is a bit of a nerf, but I think it's pretty minor, all things told. Draco's A1. Basically, he attacks somebody, and any surplus damage. So if they kill that champion, any extra damage done is inflicted upon another enemy, triple the amount of that surplus damage. Well, that surplus could crit and could do massive amounts of damage. So it's not going to crit. It's still going to do plenty of damage. Still a bonus attack. He still hits really hard on his A1 anyway. It's just not going to have that surplus crit. That's all. Okay, the last champion in this is going to be Drexthar Blood Twin. Drexthar, boy, he gets... Sorry. Okay, the next champion is going to be Drexthar Blood Twin, one of my favorites, one of my first legendaries, so he's great. But basically, his chance to provoke, it's 50%, but it's going to be boosted to 100% if the target is under an HP burn buff, and also places a decreased attack debuff for 2 turns if the provoke is placed. And then Fiery Blood is passive ability. The difference is the champion's resistance increases by 10 for every enemy under an HP burn debuff. Stacks up to 50. Also, I'm noticing a little something on that passive I want to check. Yeah, okay, so 2 things. 1, has a 55% chance of placing HP burn debuff for 2 turns on the attacker when hit. Used to just be 1 turn, so that is a change. And this champion's resistance increases by 10 for every enemy under an HP burn debuff. Stacks up to 50, makes him really good for spiders. I think that's really where he'll be shining now, which he did before, but even more so is spiders. 2-turn burn is great. The resistance increase is great. I think that was only 1 turn before, so that's a pretty significant change. So we can go ahead and look at that kit real quick. You can see here the provoke. It was 40% chance. Now it's 50% chance. And it gets boosted to 100% if they're already under an HP burn. And it places a decreased attack debuff if someone is provoked. That's really strong. I like that. That's a good change. And on this one, 55% chance of placing HP burn debuff when hit. Now it specifies that that's a 2-turn debuff. And his resistance increases by 10 for every enemy under an HP burn debuff up to 50. Again, spiders, 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 spiders. Great. Okay, so now we have Belenor here. Belenor places a 6% decreased defense, weaken, and then he also adds a perfect veil buff on this champion for 2 turns. So adding that perfect veil buff, his overkill will attack the enemy with the lowest HP with any surplus damage if this attack kills an enemy. Okay, so similar to Draco's surplus damage, it's not multiplied though. I'm not sure if he can be critted, but he's going to attack the enemy with the lowest HP with that extra damage. And then Tactical Partner activates his champion's Sword Leader skill, and then also activates Xavia's Poison Rain skill when Xavia's on the same team. So the Tactical Partner, the pairing part with him and Xavia, is he'll use his A1 and her ability too, so they both attack at the same time. That's kind of cool. I like that. So let's go ahead and look at Belenor. So yeah, this is the Sword Leader ability, which gives an increased crit rate on all allies. That's his A1. So that'll proc with Xavia's skill when they're on the same team. And then you have the Insurmountable. Basically what we're doing here is we're adding a we're adding a Perfect Veil buff to this. Looks like we're losing the increased defense, but we're adding Perfect Veil. That's a huge up. That's a win for sure. That's definitely a win there. And then yeah, and then this ability, the Overkill. So it attacks one enemy. Instead of healing him for any surplus damage, it's going to attack another enemy with that surplus damage. So that's the big change there. That's pretty significant. I think that's good though. I think the Perfect Veil is a good addition for Belenor for sure. So some pretty big changes on the horizon, especially for champions like Rotos. A lot of champions getting buffed, but Duchess and Rotos definitely getting the nerf bat. What do you guys think of that? I'm a little bit on the fence on how strong of a nerf that's going to be. I feel like all these champions are still going to be pretty meta when it comes down to it. But I'm also trying to reserve judgment till all the facts come in, basically until I get a chance to try them. You never really know until they're there in front of you. So my guess is they're still going to be extremely strong. But we'll see what happens coming down the future. Let me know what you guys think. Are you more concerned about the buffs or the nerfs? Or are you more happy about the buffs? I'll tell you, to be honest, I'm very happy about the buffs. Which champions are you most excited about? Because I'm excited to try it. Quite a few of these. Number one on my list is Kandra. I would love to hear who's number one on your list to try out. But let me know about that, guys. And remember, don't get too down. Don't get too excited. None of this has actually happened yet until the patch comes through. So don't get too crazy about it. We don't know how it's going to be until we see it. I can already tell there's going to be some reactions of people really upset, especially about Rotos, especially about Duchess. Just give it a little bit of time. Let's see how things play out. Try it out first before you get too upset about these things. And, you know, as always, just remember, it is a game. We try to have the most fun with it as we can, and we deal with what we get as we get it. Believe me, I am nervous about it too. My Rotos is sitting there quivering in fear in my arena team. But we'll see how it pans out when it all comes down. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching. Like, subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Hit the notification bell so you know when my next one comes out. And till next we meet, I'm the Deadwood Jedi. Take care.